The First Million Words, Episode 33, The Long Haul, with Jim Butcher. Sorry, let me take a time out for a few minutes because I think I hear a baby screaming. I'll be right back. Let me just make sure my wife isn't losing her mind. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves.
Again?
Yes. I'll be right back.
No, but that's all right. Yeah, I've tried. I've contained it very well. I'm sorry. I'm actually a huge fan. My friend Khadija got me into your books, and I've been. It was one of those things where it's like, I put down the first one. I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. I like that one. Let me get the second one. Then, like, from there, it's just more and more addicting. Do you have an end game for the whole series in mind, or do you just pretty much work from book to book?
No. When I was first setting them up as a class project, she says you should probably think about. Looks like you might want to be a series with this. You should maybe think about sort of planning out where you want it to go. And I said okay. And I came back the next day. I said, okay, well, I planned it out for about 20 books with a big old kind of a giant apocalyptic trilogy at the end as kind of an end cap for it. I said, do you think that's okay? And she kind of looked at me because she couldn't, my newfound enthusiasm in doing what she was telling me to do, she didn't want to quash that, so she couldn't say, no one's going to buy a 20-book series from you. You know, they're not going to read your first book and say, let's do 20 books. That isn't going to happen. And I was too dumb to know it wasn't going to happen. So as it turned out, I just did it. But anyway, she sort of looked at me and said, I think if you can get 20 books in that series sold, yeah, you'll be doing fine. So I was like, okay, great. And I went out and I've had the thing planned out, and I had a story arc for the whole, built up for the whole thing, and where it's going to go at the end, and we're more or less on track. So I still think there's going to be about 20-ish of the case books we've seen so far, and then a big old apocalyptic trilogy at the end, because who doesn't love apocalyptic trilogies?
Right. It's that's what sells. But yeah, I mean, is it just a main storyline that you planned? Like, because there's a lot of twists when it comes to the characters and where they go. Like, if you had told me on book 5 where a specific character would be. I'm trying to not spoil it for the listeners, but I mean, even if this gets on the podcast, but do you have all the sort of character changes also sort of mapped out, or is it something that just happens organically throughout, from book to book?
I know in kind of a general sense exactly where people are going to end up, but the specifics of it sometimes are things that I find out that are a surprise. Occasionally characters will show up that I didn't plan on, who will just kind of be a part of the story and go, I'm funny and cool and you need to keep me around. It's like, oh, you are? Okay, Butters, you can do that. And those are some of the funnest and most enjoyable characters, at least for me. But it's not one of those things that I've got every little final detail planned out. I know pretty much where I'm going. But the actual specifics of it, there are a lot of things that are still up in the air. There are a lot of things that will happen that I'm not planning on happening, but that will kind of turn out that way because it seems like a good idea at the time. And that's really most of writing is. Why did you write it like that? Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
All right. So have you had instances where, let's say you kill off a character in one book, but then you realize, oh, this character would have been amazing and would have had a history like further on in the series?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes, but really mostly it's kind of all about you're telling the story you want to tell, and the challenge to your creativity is how to do it with the resources at hand. In terms of, do I need to create a new character to get this done? Can I bring one of and these days it's like, well, can I, if I want to tell this kind of story, can I bring in an existing character to use to do it with? Somebody who's already there, so that we're not continually throwing tons and tons and tons of new guys at everybody. Because that gets tired, and there are people who have their favorites. So it's for me. I like to think of it as a creative challenge of how do I tell this story with the pieces that I have and get them out, and I'll only make a new one these days if I really think I need them.
Oh, okay. Because that's a problem I've had sort of writing my own things. I'm like, I get really attached to these characters that exist solely in my head and on paper. And, I don't want to kill them off, but, sometimes it just sort of is necessary for the story. I don't know how to, it's just difficult even for me as a sort of a new writer to actually, go through with, I don't know, does that happen on a professional level? People just get attached to characters and then just kind of refuse to kill them off when it becomes absolutely necessary, or?
Some people do. I'm not one of the writers who believes in that. There are some writers who, for them, the characters are essentially separate people that live in their heads. And for me, no, those people work for me. And if I decide to kill them, I am the emperor of this particular realm, and I can turn my thumb down and kill them, and they will die, and they will do it well, or there will be more trouble down the line. I'm one of the authors that thinks that the writer's in control of what's going on, and there's no one else. For whatever happens, there is no one else who decides it except me. There's no one else to blame for what happens in a book except me. So, for darn sure, if I'm going to be taking the blame for something, I'm going to be in charge of it too. So occasionally I have to grab a character by the ear and haul him around and say, no, you're not going to act like that because I'm the one in charge here. So, and if that means going back in and giving characters good motive, that's really what it amounts to is if you need a character to do something and they're just not going to do it, you need to go give them a good motivation to do it. And you as a writer, you can cheat and slip that in, earlier. You can go back and write it in earlier in the story. If you absolutely need somebody to turn left instead of right at this point in the story, you can go give them a good reason to do that. And then people go, oh, your characters are so natural. And you're like, yes, natural. I did that. It just flowed naturally.
Right. Well, that's another thing about your characters. It's like personally, you kind of get attached to these characters. So when when something actually does happen, it's it then becomes huge. It actually has meaning and impact. It's something I haven't been able to grasp myself.
Oh, absolutely. It's and that's the thing is in order for it to have meaning and impact, the reader has to have the sense that something bad and not necessarily even bad, but permanent change, something that absolutely irrevocably alters a character, can happen to them. And death is the most obvious example of that, but there are other things too. Characters can be left with scars, can be left with things that change who they are. And right. And if you don't convince people that you're not going to hit the reset button at the end of every book, then you don't really have. You're not a credible threat to their favorite character. The story is you can't really threaten them. So basically, what you do is you kill Miss Calendar in season 2 of Buffy horribly. Because she got a death scene that was like 10 minutes long. It looked like she might get away, and then she just died, and then her death was used to torture poor Giles on the show. And after that, the whole rest of that show was like, people can die in this.
Yeah,
Joss will kill people.
Right, absolutely. That's another thing. I was like, the Fellowship of St. Giles, was that a Buffy reference, or was that just? Oh
yeah, absolutely a Buffy reference.
Because that's the first thing I saw. I was like, Giles. I'm like, okay, I did again. Yeah, nerd out again. That's why it's so.
he did also happen to be the patron saint of lepers and outcasts, which is
right.
probably why he was named Giles for the Buffy show. I mean, I haven't spoken to Joss about it or anything, but that would be my guess. Because he was the library patron in charge of all the nerd outcasts. So I think that's probably where he drew that from. But yeah, if you can establish that their characters can get killed, and I killed a minor character in the second book, and wham, he's gone. And people go, oh my gosh, people can die in these books, and then they're more invested. There's more of a sense of danger and risk.
Right, or even even more sort of heart-wrenching is when they don't die, they just become something, they just change. Like at the end of this one, which I think Ben's on now. So
I'm back. Don't spoil it for me.
Oh my god, dude! We have to finish reading that so I can talk to you about it. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It was just the ending of that most recent book, I just did not see coming, like, at all. And I loved it.
Yeah, and I've been. It was so great to write that because I've been planning it for about 4 books now. So I finally got to write it out. It's like, perfect.
Yeah. Now, speaking of series in general, this is how I segue.
Okay.
I announced that I am segueing. I wonder, as far as writing such a long series, like we mentioned, you've been. They've been published for 12 years. And I guess you were writing all the way back in like the late 90s?
Yeah, I think I started Stormfront in 96.
Mm-hmm. And I heard somewhere that you do have a plan that it's going to be 20 books long, is that correct?
Yeah, 20. We just talked about that, dude.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be 20-ish of the case books like we've had so far, and then a big old apocalyptic trilogy as kind of a capstone.
Oh, nice. Oh, I'll take that part and edit it in so it sounds like we were all talking about it.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm that smooth. So what kind of what kind of forethought goes into that before you write the first book?
Okay, what you have to establish, basically the whole overstory of the series, I just wrote it the same way that I outlined it the same way I'll outline a novel.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I'm kind of keeping track of events on a slightly different scale, but you have a beginning, you have a middle, you have an end. You plan, how to get from point A to point B, and you try and make sure that each of the smaller stories you write carries you closer to that ending. And that's what we've been doing so far. It's not an accident that Harry Dresden gets killed at the end of book 12, and in the 13th book he's a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
So. I had planned. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to do 20 books in this series. What do I need to do? In book 13 needs to be something unlucky and bleak. It's like, okay, I'll have him dead and be a ghost. We'll do it like that. But I don't know. You kind of think of things. It's like, okay, I want to do. It's like I want to do a werewolf book. I want to do a ghost book, and you're kind of fitting these the kind of these general. Episode of the week books in, which is kind of the way I think of these is each of these books is kind of like a weekly episode of a show. Mm-hmm. And then you just try and plan out, what's going to be your big season finale. And that's what my capstone trilogy is, for the Dresden Files is where we're going. But there's still all these ideas, and you kind of figure out where you're going to start, where you're going to finish, so that you're not just, endlessly ratcheting up the Super Saiyan power level, where of Dragon Ball Z, where, everybody, you can't swing a cat around here without hitting a Super Saiyan somewhere.
It's over 9,000. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Power level over 9,000.
Yeah.
So you pace yourself and you figure out, okay, what's the bottom end of my scale in terms of where things are going to be happening in conflict, and what's the top end, mm-hmm. and how do I get from bottom to top in a way that makes sense. And it's actually planning out, here are the villains and here's kind of the escalating problems that are going to be coming at them, that's easy. The hard part is figuring out how the character is going to develop from one kind of set of problems to the next, and how they're going to change and how their experiences are going to alter the way they make their decisions. And that's sort of that's really the challenge, because that's something you can't do from a distance and sort of chart out on a map. That's something that you've got to do from ground level as you're going along. So as far as that much goes, that's you're riding an ATV over rough terrain. You can't really plan it from the Google map. You've just got to be there making the decision as you go. So that's something that I think flies more on instinct and more on what you learn as you continue to write the stories. But that's okay, because if you're doing your job as a writer, you're always trying to write the story that's a little bit more complex and a little bit more involved than you think you can do. You've got to keep trying to stretch yourself a little every time you write something. So even though the Dresden Files, at the same time, you've also got to balance out. A lot of times the readers really don't want different stories. They want more of the same story. If they liked your one story, then they'll want another one like that. So you've got to balance that against, how do I keep pushing myself as a writer? How do I keep hitting new marks in terms of, can I get more involved with character here? Can I get more involved with plot here? Can I get more involved with bringing more emotion into the story in this fashion? Against, okay, I don't want to just totally throw the readers a curveball and completely alter the direction of the series in this story. You don't want to do that. At the same time, you've got to keep growing. You've got to keep learning. Yeah.
And I'd imagine it's kind of difficult to throw all of that into one book, especially, you kind of, while at least for me, while I'm reading a Dresden File book, it never occurs to me until the very end, and after I'm done with it, it's like, wow, that only took place over like 1 or 2 days.
Right.
And like a year apart from the previous one.
Yeah, and that's the focus of the Dresden Files is Harry Dresden's worst weekend of the year. It's basically what each of those stories is. I wonder what's Harry's worst weekend this year. Here, okay, yeah, that's the story I want to write then. But setting it over a short actual time frame, I think helps give the story a sort of sense of urgency and momentum. Although it limits you in other ways, because there's other things that you can do in stories that are stretched out over more time that kind of lets you play with pacing and plot in many other ways. But from that first person viewpoint, I think we're, basically what I want is I want the reader to be sitting on Harry's shoulder, and so really involved in everything. And that means, downtime is not really, it's not useful to me telling those sorts of stories.
Yeah, it would just be like some blank pages. I thought about nothing for 2 days.
Right. Yeah. I kind of hung out, and I did my laundry and cleaned up my apartment a little, and I had to take my dog to the vet, and then something relevant happened. Yeah. That's not really what I want that story to be.
Yeah, so. That's 40,000 words in.
Right.
Yeah. So it's basically, I like a lot of the character building. It is kind of implied when you're doing like serialized type stuff, is because it happens a year later. There's a lot of that. Oh man, it's been a rough year. And that just saying that little line right there kind of gives you something to build on. I like that you can do that in a book series. If you did it if you did like just a trilogy. You'd kind of have to live that whole year almost. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good to do because it really does give you that chance to say, well, look how things have changed. Mm-hmm. And to be able to hold up differences in between the characters. And that's always one of the fun things for me, is when I get back to the Dresden Files book, one of the first things I do when I start a new book is to sit down and figure out what has happened to everybody during this year. And, and a lot of it most of it, frankly, never makes it into the book. Mm-hmm.
but I figure out what's going on, and that helps me get things done and create the world that should exist and change as time goes by.
Yeah, that's that whole 90% of world building that didn't make it. Yeah.
So with the storylines, have you ever found yourself in the process of maybe writing one of the drafts of your book, you ever find yourself like written into a corner by the rules that you've already established with your, with the magic systems and the world in general?
If you've got a good set of rules, the rules never write you into a corner. They kind of point you in cool directions to go. You never really tried. I never really try and think of it as I'm being limited by these rules as much as I'm being guided by these rules. If you do find yourself somewhere, then again, that's another challenge to your creativity as a writer. Well, how do I make this work for me instead of working against me? That's one of the things I've learned as a writer is something that Dresden has become increasingly good at is, in his story world, one of the things he's getting really good at is that white council judo of,
right.
How do I take this evil, these black or dark forces that are working against me and turn them to use in my favor? How do I turn them back upon the attacker? And I kind of try and think of my problems when I'm designing plots and so on in the same way. Not, I can't have Harry be here because of this threshold issue and we've established this about magic and water, but how do I make this work for me? Because these are how do I increase the drama? How do I increase the tension in a scene because I've established these rules?
Right.
So I never really feel like I'm getting painted into a corner. What I feel like is I've already established a foundation to build on. Foundations don't trap you into a corner. They give you something to build on top of. I don't get the painted into the corner thing on an instinctual level. I've never really felt it was like that.
Okay, that's right. I mean, when I read Dresden Files, it's like everything just kind of, makes sense and goes together. Whereas, certain episodes of Doctor Who, you're like, oh, well, yeah, didn't you know that Doctor can do this because he's a Time Lord? Yeah, he can get shot by Daleks. That's cool, But
right.
But yeah, whereas in yours, it's like everything just kind of flows together and makes sense. I really thought that was awesome.
A sonic screwdriver, really? Who takes a screwdriver and says this needs to be more sonic? My favorite line in the entire series. Who takes a screwdriver? Anyway, yeah, I mean, and that's exactly it. I mean, it's all about your attitude as a writer. My original writing teacher was trying to hand me writing structure with which to, kind of a structured approach to how you write fiction, how you write characters, which would help you. I mean, that's what it was supposed to do, was build this foundation for you to use. And I always saw it as something that would trap and limit me as I was trying to prove how wrong she was. But when I finally started using it, I realized that's not really the issue. This is not something that establishes traps and limits. It's something that establishes a foundation, and that's what you need to build something that goes really high, is a solid foundation. So I try and carry that over into other aspects of the writing. So yeah, I mean, don't think of yourself as being limited or being painted into a corner. The things that you feel like are trapping you are not trapping you. They're there to help you if you can be nimble enough of mind to turn them in the right direction, to make them work for you.
I wonder if you take that same thing with actually, do you outline a novel, and if so, or do you just kind of freestyle it based on that big overarching thing, or does that kind of get you in a corner, or do you do that same thing?
Oh no! I outline my novels. The more I'll put it this way: when I'm smart, I outline my novels. When I don't, I wind up running into problems. Usually somewhere in the middle. But when you have a novel outlined, really you don't need it to be super super tight in terms of outline, or at least I don't. I need to know the beginning. I need to know the end. I need to know kind of a big flashy explosive event that'll happen in the middle to keep people from falling asleep. Or from getting to sleep. Maybe is the more is the more accurate term.
Mhm.
And then I usually have, half a dozen character scenes in mind that I want to scatter and sprinkle in along the way. I'll have a couple of jokes and one-liners I want to make sure I get in there. And then after that, I just start off and go. And I can do that on the Dresden Files because I've got all these characters that I know pretty much who they are and the way they'd react to things. And so, I don't need a lot of work with them. It's a cast I've worked with for a long time. So I can depend on them for reliability, and okay, I know how I can take whatever situation, and I know exactly how Murphy would react to it, exactly how Thomas would react to it, exactly how Harry's going to react to it. So I don't need to outline that stuff. When I work with new characters, or if I'm working on another story, then I do have to give that a little bit more consideration ahead of time to make sure that the characters are doing what they're supposed to do. But here I've completely wandered off the original question, which I'm trying to remember what it was now. I'm sorry.
As if outlining maybe, do you take that same approach? Like you can think of it as a foundation, and you can build on it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly the way to go with outlining. If you're, I like to use the map metaphor on that too. It's not just enough to know to get in your car and say, I'm driving to Los Angeles. You need to know a couple other things before you take off for Los Angeles. If you're smart, you might want to know which direction Los Angeles is in, and then you might want to know how long it's going to take you to get there, and if you're going to need to make any stops along the way. What are the names of the highways you'll want to take to get to Los Angeles? I mean, there's a lot of small intermediate things in the middle that you'll need to make a successful journey, from here to there. So, I mean, that's another way. But basically, if you know your end point, if you kind of know some waypoints along the middle, if you know something, if you know which CDs you want to have with you playing in the car as you're going, you don't have to know what the next exact patch of road looks like. You can see that when it comes up in the headlights.
Right. You can plan for the stop at the shady truck stop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see, I'll need to stop for fuel here, but I don't need to know exactly what this farm looks like as I'm driving by it. Before I get started, I'll find that out along the way. Right. And your writing is sort of the same thing. You need to know some of the bigger ideas. You're going to need to know kind of a good direction of where you're going, but you don't need to stop and figure out absolutely everything before you start writing everything down.
Yeah, and then you can think of those little inspirations that hit you. Exactly. While you're working on your formula, just think of those as, it's, black ice on the road. It's either going to, end with me in a ditch or with me having this adrenaline rush at the end, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, and either way, it's interesting. Hey, I didn't know the world's biggest ball of string was on the way there, but look at that. There it is. Okay, and now we keep going.
You just marvel at it. You have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Tower of Pisa, and the world's biggest string ball.
Yep, zoom.
Hooray, America.
The bustling shall commence.
Alright, well, anyway. Hi, everybody. Wow, I think we're actually going to have like an actual intro to our show here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the First Million Words.
I think I like it better the other way, when we just randomly talking about stuff, and I'm like, yeah, so anyway, the rash hasn't gone away, but it's all right. It's on a place that no one will see, and then it's like, okay, now we're joining author Michael J. Sullivan. Oh.
You know what I was just realizing? I was going back and listening to some of our old episodes. I love, all the authors that we've had on the show. I mean, first off, it's just, year in review time right here. It's been a lot of fun talking to all the different authors that have graced us with their invaluable time to sit on a Skype call and listen to our inane babble. And we'll end up talking for sometimes up to like 2 hours. And I don't even realize until whoever we're interviewing is like, oh yeah, it's I've kind of been on here for 2 hours. I kind of gotta go, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then, um, do you feel this way? Okay, maybe it's just me, my own insecurity or whatever, but every time we finish a conversation with an author, I'm like, we hang up the phone, and then I automatically feel like a complete idiot, or like a complete like a complete failure.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. It's like and we have some pretty good times, I think, but I still maybe it's just my social awkwardness, because I sometimes feel that way whenever I end a phone conversation. Anytime I feel like, man, I really messed that up. It's like at the and maybe it's just I don't know how to say goodbye properly, or let somebody go properly. I'm like I'm like the idiot boyfriend that's like, no, no, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. I love you. You hang up first. Where'd you go?
Well, at least you haven't done the whole. You're talking to a telemarketer, or you're handling some business on the phone, and you for some reason you're like, oh, I think I gotta call my mom. So at the end of the call, like for some reason my brain thinks I'm in talking to mom mode, and I end the call with, "All right, love you, bye." And I'm pretty sure like some AT&T people have been like, "What?"
That probably like makes that telemarketer's day.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh my god, no one's." It's like, "Yeah, I don't know. No, you're screwing me on my bill, but no, I do not love. I do not love you. I thought I was talking to my mom."
Yeah, but maybe yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I'll do that sometimes when I'm talking to my mom or to my wife. Because both of us, you and I both have worked in customer service,
Oh yes.
and we both sometimes will slip into that. Please hold a moment, or you'll end the conversation with, "Okay, have a nice day. Thank you for calling."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do that. I've done that before. Like some, my student loan people will call me like they always do to harass me for money that I don't have.
Yeah.
So yeah, for some reason at the end of that call, I'm always like in customer service mode. So I'm like, yeah, I just like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's great. Thank you for, thank you for calling, this company. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, you're supposed to say that. I forgot just because I wasn't being a jerk.
Yeah. Have you found that working customer service makes you feel like you need to be nicer to customer service people?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Well, although some of them do suck, but actually, I was on the phone with oh my goodness, Audible, about a problem with my account, and I was surprised at how efficient and good they were. I mean, they're not sponsoring the show or anything.
No,
But
I love them too.
I hung up the phone and I was like, man, that guy was great. I'm like, this is the first time I've ever hung up the phone, and I feel like, okay, I actually got everything that I wanted. I didn't have to bargain away something,
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe, maybe the reason why I feel like a total loser, like after we're wrapping up an interview or anything, maybe it's because I feel like I don't know, because I always get, oh, you know what? Maybe it's maybe I feel like I didn't ask the right questions or something, or oh, we just made that author like repeat himself or herself. Like they've probably said the same thing in many interviews before. And I just feel like after the end of a conversation with an author, I'm like depressed.
Okay, just because you're totally Chris Farley showing it,
Yeah, yeah, and I'm like
stupid.
yeah, yeah. I just go like hit my head against the wall for like 20 minutes because I'm like, oh man, that person probably thinks I'm a loser, an idiot now. I don't know what it is. I don't know, and sometimes I feel that way about my writing too.
Yeah, just use that for motivation. Just like like in your acknowledgments, like and to the list of authors who never thought I could do it, and as they're reading it, they're like, wait, I never said this.
I'll just put words in their mouth, like, yeah, Jim Butcher called me an asshole.
Well, I would. I don't know. If he did that, I'd be like, I'd be depressed for like a week probably. I'd be like, oh man.
Well,
'Cause I don't know. It's like it's one of the people that's like you're like, okay, I really want him to like me because I don't know why. I don't know.
maybe that's it. Maybe we just have that that inner need to be liked and to be praised.
Exactly.
And like nobody at the end of a conversation or at the end of an interview is going to say, hey, you were a really great interviewer. Good job. No, they're going to say, hey, I had a lot of fun, and it was a fun time. Let's do it again. And that should be enough. But no, they gotta. Okay, now here I am discussing my problems. I'm also a narcissist. Or no, wait, megalomaniac. No, something like that. I don't know. I love hearing the sound of my own voice.
Megalonarcissist?
Yes. Well, I think if you say narcissist, it's more about you're obsessed with how you look, But I'm actually like I'll listen to our show after we record it and put it out there, and I'll listen to it and I'll be like, hey, I did pretty good.
I don't know. Megalonarcissist kind of sounds like a T-Rex with a faux hawk for some reason. That's what I'm picturing in my head right now. Just some dinosaur.
Megalonarcissaurus.
Yeah.
And maybe he has eyeliner too.
He's wearing a fedora and a scarf, and it's 90 degrees outside.
No, it would have to be like a pork pie hat or something. Well, no, then he'd be like a hipstersaurus. Oh, have you seen? I think you've seen. Going back to Jim Butcher stuff, have you seen the hipster Dresden meme?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I think did I show that to you?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's fun. It's like I'm on the What Council. You've probably never heard of it before.
But I don't know. It's like whenever you meet any person that you've been a fan of, you're just like, oh, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm like, oh man, I hope I'm number one that he doesn't think I'm a douche, and number two, I could somehow impress them. I'm like, no, dude, Jim Butcher's not impressed.
Yeah. Unimpressed Butcher is unimpressed. I don't know.
That guy was awesome though.
Yeah, it was a really fun conversation we had.
We could have done like 12 podcasts with him and still not gotten through everything.
Yeah. I like. It's been a good year. We started the show in April 1st. April Fool's Day is our birthday, and which I think is fitting. And since then, we've talked to quite a few authors and fellow podcasters, and also fellow podcasters who are also authors,
right?
And also authors who are also podcasters. So we've run the gamut, and I every time we put out a series of shows, I'm like, what are we going to do next? I'm like, more insecurity about myself. Great, yeah. That's just what the show's going to be about, is about how I think I suck, but I also think I'm awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just like, hey, as long as I don't get caught fishing for compliments, then I'm good. I'm all right.
Yeah, as long as you're like, now, didn't you think that was an interesting topic we just brought up?
Yeah, it was, I'm not saying it was verging on genius, but I'm not saying that either.
Oh, and you know what? I feel very accomplished, or like we have unlocked an achievement. We have on our website, fmwpodcast.com, one episode in particular. The comment section is full of spam, just full of spam. And it's all my fault. It's the episode we did with Rachel Aaron about going from the first episode, one of the first episodes we did with Rachel Aaron, where it was where we talked about boosting our word count.
Oh, okay.
And so me, like an idiot, I was like, "Hey, won't it be funny if I title the episode in a silly way?" And I wrote one weird trick to boosting your word count. And that's like, all of those stupid spam emails are like, one weird trick to make ladies want to do you,
Oh, so it was kind of like you were hiding behind that metal counter and you sneezed and then the raptors heard you. Now they're just swarming.
Yes, it's blood in the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy.
Spam.
So I
wonder if anyone actually ever clicks on that. I'm like, oh wow, someone has the magic key to those 10 tips that'll get me laid.
It's always that. It's always like, one weird trick, that the Washington Fat Cats don't want you to know, don't want you to know that'll like make your penis bigger,
It's like, yes, because that's, I'm pretty sure that's a clause in every law that goes out is let's make sure that, people have tiny schlongs.
Yeah. If anything we learned from the movie Black Dynamite is true, then yes.
Right. Oh, that was, I thought it was genius. I showed it to someone. They were like, it was all right. I'm like,
I
no,
love
it was
that
genius.
movie. I love I don't want to. Okay, the best part of that movie was the bit with the boomerang, and I'm not gonna go into detail because I want people to be surprised by it. But I had to pause the movie and laugh for like a good solid 2 minutes until I could start the movie back up. And I was like at work alone watching it on Netflix. So I'm sitting up at the front desk like, wah-ha-ha, that was hilarious. And yeah, that's a good one. But anyway, what got us on... we were talking about Michael Sullivan. Every episode we've done, I think I bring up something that he's said.
Oh, that was a really good interview. I mean, I was one of the ones where I was just starting to come into my own, and well, not really. I hadn't even come into my own, so I was like quiet. I was like just like an observer, just going, "Whoa, dude!" I was like, slow down. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, well, we that was like our second interview. Our first was with Brian Thomas Schmidt, and still with Brian, the one thing that he said that I've really been reflecting on lately, and trying to put it into action is the key to writing a villain is that every person is the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
And so I've actually been obsessing lately about making sure that my antagonists or villains or whatever you want to call them are really well-rounded and really their motivations are good and they really think they're doing the right thing, but maybe they're doing bad things to bring about the good thing. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. That's true for the most part, but I mean, there's some villains that I kind of like the mustache twirling, type of villain. Like, I don't know, like I take examples from real life. Like, maybe he's just severely narcissistic, like Kim Jong-il and something. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I hear a lot of people complaining about like antagonists and villains saying like, oh, their motivation is just greed or power, and that's really dumb, and it's not realistic. But it kind of is.
Yeah, I know plenty of people like that.
Yeah, like every people, like a lot of people, like real life people that get vilified. They get vilified because they're power hungry or greedy or corrupt, and that's real life. So I think what people are saying is that it's like cliched and maybe too close to real life. That you want your villains to be more a little more grounded, I guess.
Well, I don't know. It's just every now and then I'll do the thing where if I don't really like some sort of media figure, I'll kind of use them as sort of a little template for my villains. But it doesn't work all the time. Like I don't know. I kind of one of my villains that I'm kind of working on right now is he's just well, I should say she's just really just useless and power hungry. So I mean, she's not really a villain. She's just kind of like the conduit. But yeah, it's like I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe it's just one too many commercials on YouTube for keeping up with the Kardashians. Kardashian baby, Kardashian this. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're gonna be a villain.
What, you mean the Kim Kardashian's baby is going to grow up to be a villain?
Well, I read somewhere that that Snooki's son and Kim Kardashian's daughter.
Is it Kim or one of the other ones?
No, it's Kim.
Okay.
I've not that I want to know that. It's just
you've done the research, haven't you?
Well, I was like, I wonder what her vagina looks like. Oh, well, look. No.
Everybody knows that, Guillermo.
Yeah. it's like Snooki's son and Kim Kardashian's daughter will one day smush and create the Antichrist.
and then Honey Boo Boo will be the chosen one to defend the world from that evil.
No, I think she'll be the evil pope.
Oh, okay. Honey Boo Boo will grow up to be the evil pope. Nice.
I don't know. Well, I don't. It's like it's one of those things where I don't even watch the shows. When I have, it's usually with someone, and I'm like, really? Is there nothing else on?
Well, why? Okay, totally. We're not talking about writing at all, but I really want to. Okay, TLC, right? The Learning Channel.
Yeah.
That's the show that has Honey Boo Boo. Or that's the network that carries what is it? What's the show even called? Here Comes Honey Boo Boo or something?
I guess I don't know.
Okay, I don't know. And like that's I think that's also where John and Kate plus 8, is that who they were? I think they were on TLC too.
Yeah, or like I don't know. I'm watching the Learning Channel, yet the only thing I'm learning is how much Learning Channel sucks.
Yeah, exactly. When did the Learning Channel? Okay, you know what the last good show on the Learning Channel was?
No, which one?
Beekman's World.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, Beekman. No, they reran the episodes after. I think it was Fox who used to run them.
Yeah, well, you can watch them. You can watch them on Netflix now or something.
Oh yeah, just if somehow Beekman and Bill Nye got together, I think they might be able to rule the world.
I want to see them fight. Like, I want to see Beekman and Bill Nye get in a knife fight. Because, like, Bill Nye, he's, like, kind of a popular one. But, come on, Beekman? He's got, like, that Jersey accent. I think he's kind of tough,
Yeah, maybe. Or just have them in a duel with weapons made by the Mythbusters.
Wow. Oh, and also they have robot sidekicks from that robot show where robots fought each other.
Yes, and Neil deGrasse Tyson would be the referee, and
Morgan Freeman would narrate the whole thing.
Wow. I think if we made that happen, I think that might just bring about the apocalypse.
Oh, we need to get a Kickstarter rolling on that. So. All right. Enough messing around. Guillermo, how has your year been as a whole with writing?
As a whole, it's been like like when you try to start your car in the morning and it's really cold and it doesn't want to start.
Yeah.
But you finally get it started and then you're like, oh, that's awesome, and then you put it into drive and it dies again.
Yeah.
That's been my year. When it comes to writing, I have a lot of stuff, just none of it's done. I'm just like, everything is about, 1/2 to 3/4 done, and I'm just like, I need to finish something, but every time I'm writing, I'm like, ooh, you know what, that won't fit into this story, but it might fit into another one. Let me outline that, which is kind of what's screwing me over right now, but...
Okay, well, I think that's just kind of a natural step, you know what I mean? You're kind of... We're both kind of learning to prune things and think, well, maybe this isn't right for this story, but I really like it, so I'm going to trunk it and see what might come about it later. I have another thing we talked about near the early episodes of our show with Brian Thomas Schmidt was keeping a little log of your ideas and just seeing where they go after you just kind of write it down. And see what happens after that, and just take all these ideas and, you don't want to mash them together all the time, but, see where they go.
Right. All those different genre stories that that are completely different. Like, okay, so, it just, if you mash it all together, it's just going to turn out to be a Doctor Who episode and not a good one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, so there's this dinosaur with a rocket pack that is shooting a steampunk rifle, and it's just like, no, I just separate these, Guillermo, separate these.
Too much awesome can be a bad thing.
Yeah, because then you're like, all right, I got that story done. Now I have nothing to write. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. My whole year has kind of been like that too. But I think I'm finally on. After we've only been at this for like a couple years. We've only been like, making serious attempts here for like since November of like 2010.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when we finally started this show last April, I feel like really that kind of gave me a kick in the butt because we were talking to these authors and it's like, oh yeah, we wrote like 13. I wrote 13 books before I got published, or I spent years perfecting my craft, or years like working on TV sets, or something like that, learning story, or just done all this research, and I've learned that I'm still a baby writer, and I just need to learn the finished stuff, and I'm working on that with short stories, and I've also I used to think that I was an outliner, but it turns out like where I am now, like I went overboard, and then it turned out I was not an outliner. I was just kind of whatever, and then I went totally overboard where I outlined too much, and now I think I'm in that happy medium where I know what I'm doing, and I know how to outline to motivate myself to write.
Ah, right.
So that's where I am now, and I think I have a good story, and I've also learned the importance. Maybe not just from doing our show, but from listening to other shows, especially the Roundtable podcast, who I keep mentioning. They don't sponsor us either, but I'll sing their praises forever. And listening to that show and having been on it, like just the importance of having a sounding board, and having somebody that you can, shoot a story idea at and then get input back from.
I like their show. It's one of those things that you listen to, you're like, oh, all right. I don't have to be, the reclusive, jerk that doesn't take any kind of advice from anyone, because that's really sort of to your detriment. Although one thing that is annoying is when you kind of tell someone the premise of your story and they're like, oh, what could be cool is this and this, and you're like, no, you don't know. You just, you don't understand the character. He wouldn't do that. And then I'm like, oh, wait, now I'm being a snob.
Yeah. Well, there is such a thing as, like, getting bad advice. Like you really want to, have your sounding boards be people that you trust and that, they know what they're doing. So,
yeah.
I think that's the moral of our story. So, I think that brings our episode to an end. Did I say episode? That brings our episode to an end.
It's your...
Oh my god! Our episode is done!
Wow, we just both went there at the same time.
The first million words! That doesn't really work. Okay, whatever. So, that's our show. That was our year. I'm not sure. Like I said, whenever we finish like a series of interviews and stuff, I don't know where we're going, so... we might take a little break for a little bit just to kind of get in order, and we'll be back soon with some new episodes and some more authors and some more great information for everybody out there, and some more witty anecdotes that are just slightly off color from Guillermo.
Goat anus.
Thank you. Thank you, Guillermo. So, everybody, we'll see you next time on the first million words. Until then, I'm Ben Love.
And I'm Guillermo Ermagerd.
Ermagerd! Root! That I said right.
No, yeah, I got that. I was trying to last.
So, here's to another year. Well, that wasn't even a year. Here's to a new year.
Yeah, and to another, 5 half-done short stories and 2 half-done novels.
Yay! Well, maybe you can find those stuff you are doing. Have a full novel.